Okay, so unconventional love stories. That's what we're diving into today. And
Yeah.
let's be real. Could we pick anything more unconventional than Scott Pilgrim versus the World? I mean, it's video games, it's indie music,
It's a whole vibe.
it's a whole vibe. And somehow it's actually kind of deep when it comes to relationships.
It's not your typical rom-com, that's for sure.
Hmm.
One of the articles I was reading, they called it a fever dream, and honestly,
Yeah.
pretty accurate.
It really is. All those awkward dating moments. It's like they got put through a video game filter and someone's like, go on, player one, figure it out.
And somehow, even with all the crazy visuals and the over-the-top humor, it still manages to show, like, real relationship stuff.
Right. Like beneath all the chaos, there's some actual depth there.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Scott Pilgrim himself. He's your classic slacker 23, in a band, lives with his roommate.
The name of that band, though.
Don't even get me started on that name.
Yeah.
But yeah, his love life, let's just say he's not exactly winning any Boyfriend of the Year awards.
Yeah.
Why do you think we end up rooting for this guy? I mean, he's kind of a mess.
See, that's the interesting thing about Scott. He's flawed, for sure, kind of immature, but there's this, like, I don't know, charm to how naive he is. He's like that younger version of all of us, big dreams, no clue about relationship.
Totally. He's got a lot of growing up to do. And then into his life walks Ramona Flowers. She's like the human equivalent of cool, mysterious, everything he thinks he wants.
She could have been just another manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
You know, the one who swoops in to teach the guy about life.
Oh, I know the type.
But Scott Pilgrim actually flips that on its head. Ramona's got layers, you know, baggage, a past, her own thing going on.
Oh, for sure. And that baggage is literally out to get him 7 evil exes, each one crazier than the last, and he has to defeat them to win her heart. Imagine that in real life, battling your partner's exes.
Yeah, thankfully, real life isn't that explosive.
Oh.
But that's what's so clever about this movie,
Yeah.
right? It's a metaphor for how tough relationships can be. Those evil exes, they're not just random bad guys. Each one represents something from Ramona's past.
Really?
Heartbreak, bad choices, all the things that made her who she is.
So Scott's not just dealing with the Ramona of today, he's got to deal with all the baggage that came before him, too.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes you think, how often do we run into stuff from our partner's past?
Yeah.
Insecurities, hang-ups, all that. Scott's battles, they're ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
But they show that everyone comes with a history. And love. Love means accepting all of it, even the messy parts.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So each of these crazy battles, they're like lessons learned, right? Relationship 101, Scott Pilgrim style.
You got it.
Like, there's that fight scene with Lucas Lee, the action star ex. It's totally over the top, but does that maybe represent dealing with an ex who needs constant validation?
You're picking up what the movie's putting down, yeah. There's way more to those fight scenes than meets the eye.
It's easy to get caught up in all the action, the video game stuff, but underneath.
Way deeper meaning, right?
Right. About love, loss, and like you said, growing up.
Exactly. And speaking of growing up, Scott's got a lot of that to do himself, right?
Yeah.
He's got his own baggage to unpack.
Yeah, let's not forget about Knives Chow.
Ah, yes. The high school girlfriend. While he's busy falling for Ramona.
Talk about a double standard, right? He wants Ramona to just accept his past,
Yep.
but he's not exactly a model of emotional maturity himself.
Nope. And it really highlights that idea that growth in a relationship, it takes two. You can't expect your partner to deal with their stuff if you're not willing to do the same.
It's kind of ironic, right? He's freaking out about Ramona's past, but he's not exactly Mr. Perfect relationship guy himself.
Totally. But the movie's smart about that.
Yeah.
It doesn't let Scott off easy. He messes up, and that's what makes watching him grow so interesting.
So it's deeper than just guy chases girl. It's about him figuring his own stuff out along the way.
Exactly. Remember that Nega-Scott battle? Visually, that's like his internal struggle playing out.
Yeah.
He's literally fighting his own worst impulses, the negativity, the selfish part of himself.
Whoa, I never thought about it like that, but it makes sense. We've all got our own version of Nega Scott lurking inside, right?
Right. Those bad habits we just can't seem to shake.
Exactly. It's like the movie's telling us, recognize those things about yourself, then choose to fight against them, even if it's not easy.
And that's something everyone can relate to who hasn't had those moments. But Scott Pilgrim does it with awesome music and fight scenes.
Speaking of the music, can we just appreciate how killer that soundtrack is? It's not just background noise, it's like part of the story.
Totally agree. It's indie rock, it's chiptune, it's like this perfect blend of old and new.
Hmm.
Really gets you pumped.
And it's not just cool for the sake of being cool. There are moments where the music just elevates the whole scene. Like when Scott and Knives first meet, that music swelling, it adds this whole other layer of awkward sweetness.
It's really clever how they do that. The music mirrors what the characters are feeling, you know? Like during that last battle with Gideon, you go from this intense fight music to something way more mellow when Scott finally understands his role in it all.
Ugh, so good. And the visuals, too. It's like a comic book exploding on screen. Those bright colors, the 8-bit stuff popping up. It's crazy unique.
That's Edgar Wright for you. He's got such a unique style. Takes stuff we all know, video games, comic books, mashes it all together, and somehow it works.
It's more than just style, though. Those visuals actually add to the story. Like we're seeing the world through Scott's eyes, where even small stuff feels huge.
Exactly. It's heightened reality, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the movie works on so many levels. It's funny, it looks amazing, but it's also got so much heart. You care about these characters, even when they're making terrible choices.
And that's what makes this movie stick with you, even after the credits roll. It's not just a fun, throwaway action comedy. You actually walk away thinking about your own relationships, your own baggage.
It makes you look inward, whether you want to or not.
Which, let's be real, isn't always fun.
Definitely not always fun, but it can also feel kind of good, like a weight off your shoulders.
Okay, yeah, I get that. It's like the movie gives you permission to admit that we've all got a little evil X energy in us, right? Those times we're not our best selves, when we mess up, hold on too tight.
Exactly. And the point isn't to beat ourselves up about it. It's to say, hey, I recognize that part of myself, and I want to do better.
So it's less about fighting literal X's, more about fighting those bad habits, those patterns we fall into.
Exactly. And that fight, it takes self-awareness, communication, all those things we're not always great at, but they matter.
Though a video game battle to solve relationship problems, that'd be
Ah,
kind of cool.
right. Sign me up for that couples therapy.
Uh-huh, the ultimate test. But seriously, what I really took away from Scott Pilgrim is that there's no easy solution for love. It's messy, complicated, and sometimes you gotta go through the ringer to figure things out.
And that's what makes it relatable. Life's not a video game where you can just hit reset. It takes effort, looking inward, and sometimes realizing the biggest obstacle is, well, you.
There's that quote, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." But in this case, it's more like rising every time you get knocked down by a psychic vegan.
Perfectly said. And it's such a powerful message coming from a movie that's also hilarious and full of awesome music and visuals. There's heart in the absurdity, you know, and potential for real growth.
Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's a wild ride, visually stunning, and it just might inspire you to face your own demons. Metaphorically speaking, of course. What parts resonated most with you? Hit us up on social media and let us know. And remember, in the game of love, we're all just trying to level up.